Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is the second lecture of the lost Islamic history, and we are in this chapter we are going to be talking about the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let's start. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born in the town of Makkah around the year 570 CE or 571 CE. He belonged to the Banu Hashim clan, which is the subset of the Quraysh tribe that controlled Makkah. About 80 kilometers from the Red Sea. It benefited greatly from the north-south trade routes that connected the Romans in the north and Yemen in the south. Yet, Makkah was far detached from both these places. So, Makkah was at once both internationally connected and isolated. It was the location of the Kaaba, so the annual pilgrimage attracted the Arabs from all over the peninsula. So, it was at the same time the religious place and also which actually meant business, and it was also internationally connected and isolated. So this is the map of Arabian Peninsula from the book Atlas of the Islamic Conquest. This is a really amazing book if you want to have the maps of early Islamic conquest, even some later Islamic conquest. So you can check that out. You can see the Makkah Mukarramah is there in the map. It is in the western part of the Arabian Peninsula, and there is Medina Munawwara. You can see early life of the Prophet Muhammad. Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam early life was marked by hardship and loss because his father Abdullah died before his birth, and his mother Amina died when he was 6. Despite belonging to a wealthy tribe of Quraysh, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did not grow up amid riches. He did not grow up among riches. So his reputation as an honest trader led to him being known as As-Sadiq and Al-Amin. As-Sadiq means truthful, and Al-Amin means trustworthy. The young Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not get involved in the religion of the Quraysh. The original monotheistic message of Ibrahim and Ismail still held weight for a few in the Arab society known as the Hunafa, singular Hanif in the Arabic word, which means monotheists. Hunafa means monotheists, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was one of them. They are also called Ahle Fitra in Arabic. He made a habit of retreating to a cave atop a mountain about 5 kilometers from the center of Makkah before Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam received the revelation. This is Ghar Hira, where he used to retreat. Beginning of Nubuwah in 610 CE. So, like most people in Makkah, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was illiterate, meaning he did not know how to read and write. Muhammad received a revelation and began to invite those closest to him covertly, so secretly. Quranic verses talked about the Tawheed, which is the oneness of God, or the monotheism, and Day of Judgment, which is Yom Akhirat, social justice, etc. Slaves, servants, and the poor made up a large proportion of the early Muslim community because they were the most attracted by the message preached by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Social revolution is rarely welcomed by those in power, so they had to face the challenges. Because of the Kaaba, Makkah was a religious center also for the Arabs throughout the Arabian Peninsula, which meant big business for Quraysh. And Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's message meant a threat to their business, so they had to counter it. Persecution. Eventually, the size of the Muslim community became too large for the rest of the Quraysh to ignore. In the eyes of many leading members of the Quraysh, the solution was to rid themselves of this new religion and this new social movement by getting rid of the source, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But Arab society still had some structure and rules, so they could not do that. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was still under the protection of his uncle Abu Talib, who was the leader of Banu Hashim clan of the Quraysh. So Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself could not be harmed, but the protection that he enjoyed was not extended to his followers. His followers had to be protected, but they weren't able to do that. Many while Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself had the protection, he was powerless to stop the oppression of his followers. And then the Quraysh, then it led the Quraysh to have a boycott. In 617, the Quraysh decided to implement an all-out boycott of Muhammad's clan, which was Banu Hashim, to whom many Muslims belonged. The few Muslims not belonging to Banu Hashim, such as Abu Bakr, Umar and Usman, did all they could to supply the persecuted group. But in the end, the boycott was ineffective in persuading Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam uh, and his Muslim followers to discontinue his preaching. The boycott also revealed the strength of the ties of the early Muslim community, that they are not going to give up in whatever condition they are. The persecution probably played a role in the death of Prophet's wife Khadija in 619. The emotional support she provided in the early years was indispensable for the Prophet, so this was a huge loss, emotional, for the Prophet. Soon afterwards, his uncle, who had protected him, Abu Talib, also became ill and died. And this year is known as Amul Huzn, the year of grief, as it was very hard on the Prophet. This year was very hard on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After that, the death of Abu Talib had huge implication for the Muslim community and for Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. Without a strong leader, there was little to protect Muhammad and the rest of the Muslim community from the leaders of the Quraysh. So Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam decided to road out to Taif, and he went there and he met with the three brothers who led the tribe. They rejected his proposal, and on his way out of the city and back to Makkah, a crowd of people from Taif gathered to pelt him with stones and insults, leaving him blooded by the time he was safely out of the range of city. But this is the map of Taif. You can see, and there it is, and that's the distance between Makkah and Taif. You can see that in relation to Makkah and Medina, this distance. Hijrah 622 CE. So the two main tribes of the Yathrib. Yathrib was, which is now called Medina. It was named as Yathrib in the past and at that time. So the two main tribes of Yathrib, Aus and Khazraj. These were the two tribes. So they were engaged in a perpetual struggle for power that turned deadly in the 610s. Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's reputation as a trustworthy and reliable man was already well known in Yathrib. So they decided in 620 that we should go to Muhammad to ask him or seek his emigration to Yathrib to serve as our leader. So they went there and they asked for the emigration of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam himself was one of the last to leave Makkah in 622 when he journeyed with his close friend Abu Bakr. And the Quraysh also had a plan to have him murdered, but he got away from that plan and got safely into Yathrib. Now, the Prophet's flight from Makkah was known as the Hijrah, meaning the immigration. It is very important and a turning point in early Islamic history and is used to this day as the beginning of the Islamic calendar. Now, after reaching Medina, what Prophet Muhammad did is that the Muslim community would now turn Medina into the first Muslim state and Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam into its leader. The example set by the Prophet in his 10 years in Medina would inspire hundreds of years of Muslim politics, social order, and economics. The community of immigrants, or Muhajirun in Arabic, represented a diverse group of people, and there were numerous individuals who were immigrants from lands as far away as Africa, Persian, and the Byzantine Empire. Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would act as the city's ultimate arbitrator. Now, the constitution, as it is called, or more accurately, it is called a charter. The charter gave the Ausis Jews freedom to practice their religion because there were also the tribes of Jews living in Yathrib. But they had to recognize the political authority of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam over the city and join the common defense in the case of an attack from Quraysh. Some of Medina's Jews accepted Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as a prophet and converted to Islam. Some probably genuinely believed that he was a prophet, but the fact that he was not a Hebrew was problematic for those who followed Jewish theology strictly, so they did not convert it to Islam. The Battle of Badr, it is the first main battle in Islam, and as we are just talking about the main point, so we are skipping a lot of stuff in there, but that's actually not the point of this presentation. The Battle of Badr was in 2 Hijri or 624 CE. The Prophet's hijrah to Medina did not mean the end of conflict with the Quraysh. The Muslim community had not yet been given the permission to fight by the Prophet ﷺ. The Quran testifies to the sanctity of life and the egregiousness of unjustly taking money. Then Quran gave the permission to fight those who were being fought. So the opportunity came in 624 when the Muslim community mustered a small army of around 300 men to intercept a caravan belonging to Quraysh that was passing by Medina. So the Battle of Badr was of monumental importance for the new community and Medina, and this changed the whole history of Muslims. So these are the routes of the caravans and armies in the Badr. So you can see the caravan was going from Syria to Makkah, and there was their route. And then the army of Meccan army went from the Makkah to Badr, and the Medina army, Muslims army, went to Badr, and there the war happened. This is the map of that Battle of Badr. These are the Shuhada or the martyrs of Battle of Badr. The next year, an even larger Meccan army was assembled, and the aim of them was to take revenge. The army camped out a few kilometers north of the city in the shadow of the imposing Mount Uhud, where they could harass the rural farms surrounding Medina. As a part of the constitution of Medina, Muhammad had vowed to protect the city and its inhabitants and was thus compelled to organize a fighting force. There was, however, a group within the city that opposed his plan, Muhammad's plan, believing that their best bet was to leave the rural farmers to fend for themselves. They were joined by two of the Jewish tribes of the city as well, who refused to go out to Uhud to battle a superior force. Muhammad was thus forced to march out to Uhud with a considerably smaller army than he anticipated. So the Battle of Uhud happened in 625 CE or 3 Hijri. The results of the battle were disastrous for the new Muslim community. The Meccans, led by brilliant Khalid ibn al-Walid, managed to rout the Muslims from the battlefield up onto the slopes of Uhud. Hamza, the hero of Badr, was killed in the fighting and his body mutilated by the Quraysh. The Quraysh, having defeated the Muslim army in the battle and believing they had done enough to damage Muhammad Wasallam's reputation, retreated back to Mecca. The Battle of Uhud did sow seeds of tension between Medina's Muslims and the Jews, most of whom had refused to honor the terms of constitution and joined the battle. Now you can read further details of this one in any book of history, like Ibn Khaldun's first part of or second part of the book. This is the map of that battle. So you can see Khalid ibn Walid's cavalry went from behind the Mount Uhud and behind the Muslims, and the Muslims were kind of surrounded by the Meccan army. This is the Mount Uhud. This is the grave of Hamza radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Then we have the Battle of Trench, which happened in 627 CE or 5 Hijri. The Meccans besieged the Medina from the north and sought the help of one of Medina's Jewish tribes, the Banu Qurayza, who lived on the southern outskirts of the city. The Meccans and their Jewish allies were unsuccessful. The Battle of the Trench, as it was called, was a disastrous failure for the Quraysh, who failed to even dent the power of Muhammad in the city. It was even worse for the Banu Qurayza. They had broken the terms of the constitution and thus were liable to be punished according to its terms. So Muhammad was setting an important standard with his handling of the Jews of Medina. He made clear the Islamic law had no problem with the presence of non-Muslims living within a Muslim state. This is the map. After that, we have the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, which happened in 628 CE or 6 Hijri. With his position, or with Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's position in Medina secured, he finally could finally deal with Quraysh on an equal level. Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam set out in 628 with an army of 1500 towards Makkah, but this was not an army intent on war. He camped just outside the borders of Makkah at Hudaybiyah, waiting for permission from Quraysh to enter the sacred grounds. The Meccans, no doubt baffled by the audacity of the Muslims just 6 years after their escape from Makkah, had a difficult decision to make. They negotiated a treaty with Muhammad known as the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Some Muslims were clearly discontented by the terms of the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, but they accepted it. Advantages of the treaty. So, what were the advantages of this treaty? The treaty provided a welcome respite from conflict that gave Muhammad the ability to expand Islam far beyond Medina. Even Meccans began to convert. Khalid ibn al-Walid and Amr ibn al-As left Makkah and joined Muhammad in Medina in the years after Hudaybiyah. The treaty had failed to give the Muslims immediate control of their holiest site, but it allowed Islam to grow exponentially throughout Arabia. Conquest of Makkah, which happened in 629 or 630 CE or 8 Hijri. Just 2 years after its signing, a tribe allied with Quraysh launched a surprise attack against the tribe allied with Muhammad just outside the borders of Makkah. At this point, the people of Makkah knew there was no way they could militarily defeat the Prophet. Attempted negotiations between Muhammad and the Quraysh ended in failure. In early 630, his army of over 10,000 Muslims marched on the holy city. Muhammad's army entered Makkah bloodlessly. They submitted to Muhammad the man they had oppressed, chased out of city, and gone to war with. Muhammad in turn proved to be a lenient conqueror. After that, we have farewell sermon, which took place in 632 CE. By the time of the conquest of Makkah, Muhammad was about 60 years old. A new social order had been inaugurated. He even managed to make some inroads among the tribes living on southern edges of the Byzantine and Persian empires, which would not go unnoticed. After conquest of Makkah, Muhammad returned to his adopted hometown of Medina. In early 632, he journeyed to Makkah for a final pilgrimage, the Hajj, which is the Hajj. His farewell sermon summarized his prophethood. It was a complete revolution in every sense. After the pilgrimage, Muhammad returned to Medina, where the foundation was laid for the continued expansion of Islam. A military expedition was prepared to trek north against the Byzantines. The Islamic ethics of war, which would guide hundreds of years of Muslim armies, were reiterated. Then we have the end of prophethood. Muhammad fell ill in the early summer of 632 CE. He experienced debilitating headaches and fever and was soon unable to walk without the help of his cousin Ali and his uncle Abbas. When he was unable to lead the 5 daily prayers in the mosque, he appointed Abu Bakr to lead them in his place. He spent his final days in the house of his wife Aisha. His increasing talk of death and the fact that he was now unable to even rise up to lead them in the prayer played heavily on the hearts of the Muslim community. This was the first time when they were not praying behind the Prophet himself. All creatures, whether they were animals, humans, or even angels, would experience death according to Islamic belief. On 8 June 632 CE, with his head on Aisha's lap, the Prophet Muhammad breathed his last. And that was the end of this chapter. In the next chapter, we will be talking about the Rashidun Caliphate, or the Khulafai Rashidin.